Human nature in the family of blood is one of the best stories of the revived series of Doctor Who. No question. It's a familiar face in top 10 Doctor Who episode lists, even when the classic series is included, and it holds the distinction of topping our recent countdown of the top 10 Doctor Who episodes of the revived series, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already, by the way. Set just before the First World War, the story revolves around the Doctor's efforts to avoid the family of blood, a ruthless alien family with an extremely short lifespan, who wish to capture the Time Lord's essence in order to achieve immortality. In a last-ditch effort to escape, the Doctor elects to transform himself into a human and store his consciousness in a fob watch, asking Martha to watch over him until the family invariably die. Disguised as a boarding school teacher, John Smith, inventive, the Doctor is successful in his transformation, and it seems as though his efforts to evade the family will have been successful. But of course, this being Doctor Who, this seemingly foolproof plan has its limitations, and as the family arrive and start wreaking havoc on Earth, Martha must try her best to awaken the Doctor before it is too late. There is a multitude of reasons to watch this story: the fantastic science fiction concept, the incredible work by the production team in rendering a realistic period setting, and of course, the performance of Harry Lloyd as Jeremy Baines, who stands as arguably the best one-off humanoid villain in any Doctor Who story. But what really makes this episode one of the all-time best is the way in which it brilliantly deconstructs the Doctor's character. In rendering the 10th Doctor as John Smith, the story sheds light upon the parallels between the Doctor and the human race itself, whilst also exposing the more alien aspects of his character. And for a story which barely features the Doctor at all, it is interesting how much we are able to learn about his nature, through both the everyday heroics of John Smith, and of course the darker sides of the Time Lord, which are brought to the forefront throughout the duration of the episode. Across this video, I'll be unpacking the characterisation of the Doctor in this two-parter, and highlight how the story, in transforming the Doctor into a human, ironically shows him at his most alien, and offers us one of the best deconstructions of the Time Lords ever committed to screen. So, to get to the bottom of how both human nature and the family of blood do such a great job in deconstructing the Doctor, it is important to consider how the two-parter treats the Time Lord's human alter ego, John Smith. There is obviously the superficial similarity between the 10th Doctor and John, but I think what's really interesting is the way in which aspects of the Time Lord's character bleed into both the personality and actions of his disguise. As a teacher at a boarding school, John holds a similar position to the Doctor within society. He is in charge of a group of people significantly more naive than himself, who he wishes to impart wisdom upon and show the wonders of the world around them. More importantly, there are elements to Smith's character which imply that he is imbued with some of the Doctor's heroism. The Doctor's split-second timing is in part due to his alien origins, but the decision to act good almost instinctively, as it were, perhaps a reflex, is telling of the kind of person who the Doctor is. He does not seek to do good deeds for reward or gain, but merely as a means to an end.
I do what I do because it's right! Because it's decent! And above all, it's kind!
This act by Smith illuminates one of the core tenets of the Doctor's philosophy, that everyday acts of kindness, small actions in the face of great obstacles, are just as important as grand gestures. The Doctor has always relied on the actions of others in his travels, and often he has spurred otherwise unremarkable people to do remarkable things. This small set piece highlights that his mere presence, though it may be subconscious, is enough to push John to do something extraordinary. I think it's really important as well that John Smith spends much of his time dreaming of the Doctor and his adventures. Whilst the decision to weave this into the story is of course a signpost that traces of the Doctor are present in Smith, the dreams also pose an important question. If John Smith is something of a reflection of the Doctor, a distillation of his personality in human form, then is the Doctor's dream the opposite? Does the Doctor dream perhaps of an ordinary life? Russell T Davies consistently weaved these moments into the series across his tenure, most notably in Father's Day.
You two. Street corner, 2 a.m, getting a taxi home. I've never had a life like that.
And I love the idea that his transformation into John acts as an almost temporary fulfillment of this wish. For once in their life, the Doctor has the chance to slow down, to pause his life and experience what it might be like to live as an ordinary person. It's interesting to think that whilst the family serves as the primary motive for this transformation, This is the kind of thing that the Doctor might have experimented with regardless. The 10th Doctor has always felt considerably more human than any other incarnation of the character, and it is interesting to watch how these tendencies are amplified when in the guise of Smith. And yet John Smith is a human, and this makes him a very different man to the Doctor because of one key distinguishing factor: he finds love. In a series that chooses to focus on Martha's unrequited love for the Doctor, how perfect is it that we get to see David Tennant flex his comedic acting chops and go full-blown rom-com on us?
It's been ages since I've been to a dance, only no one's asked me.
Well, I never thought you'd be one for it. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't. If you do, you may not. I probably won't. But even if I did, then I couldn't. I wouldn't want to.
For a Doctor who is so frequently portrayed as a central romantic figure, dare I say it, an object of lust, it's great to see Tennant go full Hugh Grant here, often mixing up his words or performing feats of slapstick that would make Jim Carrey feel jealous.
The stairs.
What about
They're right behind you.
This romantic aspect of Smith's character is not just played for laughs, however, as this key difference in the two characters' nature comes to a head in perhaps the most pivotal scene of the episode. As John, Joan and Martha hide whilst the family try to flush them out, Martha is quizzed by John about the Doctor, and as she responds to his questions, we get a disturbing insight into how alien the Time Lord really is.
Falling in love? That didn't even occur to him.
No.
Then what sort of man is that?
As I stated previously, the 10th Doctor is arguably the most human of the Time Lord's incarnations, and yet in this moment we come to understand how far removed he is from humanity. Ten's position as a romantic hero makes this inference particularly chilling. We have seen previously his relationship with his companions and his seeming empathy for their plights and struggles, but in becoming one of them, he neglects to consider a key element of their existence, almost as if his lifespan has elevated him beyond such petty ideas as falling in love. This is not to say that the Doctor does not have capacity for love. It is love, after all, that has always been at the centre of his struggles with evil. He has certainly used it as a means to push people to do miraculous things.
Daddy's coming home! Help me!
Everybody lives, Rose. Just this once. Everybody lives!
But does he see this as something that is beyond himself? For a creature who is essentially immortal, does romantic love seem almost small? The scene in which John's life hypothetically plays out pushes this question further. In this sequence we see a man who has had his whole life ahead of him, a man with dreams and ambitions who would live to a ripe old age and leave behind a legacy in the form of children and grandchildren. John had everything to look forward to, and what we see of his life with Joan looks nothing less than bliss. But this was never to be. From the day John existed, it was never going to end this way. And what's more, the Doctor was fully aware of this. There is an argument to be had here that John's life is an unfortunate but necessary casualty in an effort by the Doctor to prevent the family from causing further devastation. But at the same time, the 10th Doctor's actions cause a man to die. Or rather, perhaps much worse, he gives someone a taste of life before cruelly revoking it. As if Smith were a lamb to the slaughter. As much as it was outside of the Doctor's control to know what would happen to his human alter ego, he took it upon himself to create a new life, and with that he also took it upon himself to take it away. As John says to Martha,
So your job was to execute me?
so, what did John's life mean to the Doctor? Did he ponder about the ethical considerations of such an act before deciding that the ends justified the means? Was he so pressed by the family that he did not have time and the whole thing was just a hasty operation? No. I don't think it was either of those options. In fact, I think perhaps more chillingly, he saw the whole thing as something frivolous, and so those sort of questions simply didn't matter. There is a certain arrogance to the Doctor's character that has always bubbled below the surface, a feeling that he is somehow above all those who he saves. And whilst this arrogance is ultimately what drives him to continue to protect the universe, it is also responsible for the carelessness with which he approaches the life of John Smith. Moreover, after John dies, he does not seem to comprehend the emotional impact his actions have caused, as he tactlessly offers Joan the opportunity to join him on his travels.
Come with me.
Sorry.
Travel with me.
It's what?
My companion.
But that's not fair.
There is no question that this moment is an instance of deep hubris on the Doctor's behalf. A grieving woman stands before him. shaken from her encounters with the family and the death of the man she loved, and yet he stands there, the man responsible for all of it, and asks her to travel with him as if it were that simple, as if she could simply forget all that had happened to her in an instant, bowled over by the Doctor's invariable charisma. There's always been a showboating aspect to the Doctor's invitations to travel with him, but this one is almost gross as he attempts to coerce Joan into travelling by evoking the memory of the late John Smith, a man who he is not.
We could start again. I'd like that. You and me. We could try at least. Because everything that John Smith is and was, I'm capable of that too.
There is no question here, this is deeply manipulative. It is this callousness towards John's life and Joan's suffering that showcases some of the darkest sides of the Doctor's character ever. His total disregard for John, as if he were somehow lesser than the Time Lord, is lambasted by Joan in a dry, sweeping statement as she merely says,
He was braver than you. In the end. That ordinary man. You chose to change. He chose to die.
And in this instance, she is right. The Doctor risks very little in masquerading as John Smith. Yes, there is a chance that John may be captured or killed before Martha has the chance to give him the fob watch, but the Doctor is very aware of the risks undertaken in transforming himself. In contrast, John is unaware that his life would always have to end prematurely, and when the time comes to accept his fate, he does so not through cowardice, but with strength. He acts selflessly and gives his life to save those around him. What the Doctor does not understand is that the man John Smith was is the man Joan wanted, and she would never want the Doctor instead. The Doctor, of course, has done this before in many instances, but always with the foreknowledge that he is able to regenerate. There will be another life for him afterwards, whereas for John there will be nothing. It is not the same thing. The essence of who John Smith is will always be forgotten. As the Doctor seems somewhat taken aback by Joan's ambivalence before him, she confronts him with perhaps the biggest character assassination ever undertaken against the Doctor.
If the Doctor had never chosen this place, on a whim, would anyone here have died?
No moment in the revived series cuts through the Doctor's core as much as this. In his many travels, the Doctor makes it his mission to save those who he encounters, and yet these actions have the unintended aftershock of untold devastation. For a man who prides himself on his ability to save people, the Doctor has an extremely high body count weighing down on his conscience, and as Joan points out this contradiction to the Doctor, we are reminded of the countless number of characters who have fallen due to running into him at the wrong moment. There is an almost utilitarian logic at the core of the Doctor's moral compass, and in his dealings with the family we see the flaw in this form of thinking. He sees the death or surrender of the family as his top priority, and any casualty which is caused by his decision to visit Earth on a whim is a necessary cost. But, and I think this is a big but, the Doctor never had to transform. As is detailed by Baines's monologue as the family are defeated, the Doctor's decision to hide from the family was never motivated by fear, but by kindness.
And then we discovered why he'd run away from us and hidden. He was being kind.
Whilst this is obviously an act of extreme mercy on the Doctor's part, in doing this he also opened the floodgates to the orgy of destruction that the family unleashed upon Earth. It caused countless people to suffer from bereavement, emotional trauma and heartbreak. There is an argument for both sides, and I don't think there is a correct answer to the Doctor's moral quandary, but the question remains as to whether the Doctor truly needed to transform in the manner in which he did, or whether this was merely a whim or an attempt to gain an insight into what it would be like to be human. And if this were to be the case, did such an act really need to have put so many lives at risk? Could he have not tried it at a different point in time when the danger was lessened, or taught the family a lesson some other way? Like John Smith, the family almost run in parallel to the Doctor and further serve to illuminate and accentuate the more alien aspects of this character. The most surface level comparison between the two species is their life cycle, with the Doctor existing as a theoretically immortal being whilst the family have a mayfly's lifespan. But these differing forms of existence imbue in both races a different approach to life. The Doctor's elongated existence gives him a sense of moral duty and purpose, a drive to protect and preserve the universe, whilst the family act on impulse, seeing their limited existence as an excuse to engage in acts of chaos and terror. Similarly, both races use humans as a means to achieve their own ends. The family do this in a more blatant sense, possessing humans so that they are able to transform their disembodied consciousness into a tangible form, but the Doctor is also reliant on humans to some extent when achieving his goals, as was touched upon in Journey's End.
The man who abhors violence, never carrying a gun. But this is the truth, Doctor. You take ordinary people and you fashion them into weapons.
The Doctor has often used humans to perform actions which he refuses to engage in, whilst also himself to uphold his reputation as a pacifist. The most common manifestation of this is his refusal to use weapons whilst often associating with those who are willing to do so. But the Doctor's use of Martha across this story is also questionable. In disguising himself as a human, he not only puts her in grave danger as far as the family are concerned, but also relegates her socially to a position of servitude, with Martha having to endure the racial prejudice as a result of the time period they have decided to hide in.
Tell me then, Jones, with hands like those, how can you tell when something's clean?
Moreover, the Doctor's use of Martha as an executioner puts her in a difficult position morally, forcing her to take on the responsibility of destroying John Smith and the life he has built for himself. The Doctor is very much active in the creation of John Smith, but in his death he is passive, passing on the responsibility of John's death to someone else, to his companion, and leaving her to deal with the emotional burden instead. What a dick. Whilst the Doctor's actions here did not exhibit the kind of callousness or disregard for life as the family, there is a degree to which he uses humans as a means by which to increase his power. The family's power is material, they use humans as a way of achieving bodily form, but the Doctor's is psychological. He knowingly uses his charm and charisma to encourage humans to do things on his behalf. And yet, despite all this, we know that the Doctor's use of humans is motivated by a desire to see others do good, and when the time comes for him to stand over the family and enact a form of judgment over them, we see the 10th Doctor at his most godlike, aligned to our moral compasses, but powerful enough to enforce them in a deity-like fashion. As the Doctor stands before the family, we see in this single shot both magnitude of his power, but also how small he makes other creatures feel in his wake. As Baines recalls his encounter with the Doctor, the so-called Fury of the Time Lord, we see him and the family, a race much more powerful than our own, reduced to nothing, crumbling under the Doctor's magnitude as if they were a small child being told off by a parent.
He never raised his voice. That was the worst thing. The fury of the Time Lord.
In that single shot of Tennant's Doctor, we see a creature who has lived for over 900 years, and we are reminded of a very simple fact. Whilst the Doctor may look like us, he is very much, and always will be, an alien, no matter how much he tries to be something else. As I've discussed across this video, the central theme underpinning this story is both the extent to which the Doctor is unlike us, and the extent to which the Doctor, in all of his alienness, wishes to be more like us. And as he enacts punishments which ironically render the family's wish to live forever a reality, we return to this central conundrum. It is noted by Baines that the Doctor's decision to flee the family is born out of his kindness, but what sort of kindness was this? Was the Doctor's mercy merely giving the family a chance to stop their pursuit? Or rather, was the Doctor's mercy more of a reflection of the Time Lord's conflicted feelings towards his near immortality? The family, in seeking to live forever, may have seen this as an ultimate escape from their shortened lifespan, but the Doctor, an ancient creature who has loved and lost millions of times before, knows that eternal life is not at all what it is cracked up to be. In trapping the family in immortality, the Doctor exposed them to the pitfalls of his own existence, this constant cycle of time without any release. And it is this which makes human nature and the family of blood so powerful. Just as the family wanted to explore immortality, the Doctor wanted to discover what it may be like to be mortal, and as he and Martha depart off, again, to see the wonders of the universe, we are left wondering whether the Time Lord's temporary spell as a human was a flight of fancy, or perhaps the fulfillment of an impossible dream.
So, we didn't think we'd be doing this, but someone has actually donated $100, which is incredible.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Chike.
Honestly, that's awesome. You are, as we said in our Patreon video, literally keeping the lights on. So, no, but seriously, thank you very much. And,
we're just sort of in shock, aren't we?
Full Fat Videos is going to strange new places. Full Fat Videos just got upgraded, and along with that, we're upgrading our Patreon with new tiers and rewards just for you. Patreon could really help us make Full Fat Videos self-sustaining, and it'll allow us to make better videos and better content for you. For just $1 a month, you'd be helping us out a great deal already, which is why we thank you at the end of every video. Not to mention you'd get exclusive access to Full Fat Milk Posting, a Facebook group where you can talk to us about movies, TV and games, as well as some memes. We like a bit of memes.
For $3, you'll get access to everything from the previous tiers, but you'll also get the chance to watch our videos one day early, as well as get access to exclusive scripts and bloopers.
For just $5 a month, you'll get access to everything from all the other tiers, as well as exclusive access to ask the questions for our monthly Q&As.
And that's not all. For just $10, you'll get access to all of the above, as well as an exclusive commentary track picked by you.
For $100, I mean, you'd be keeping the lights on, so we'd really appreciate it, and we'd probably thank you at the end of every video on camera. You'd be really helping us in any way, shape or form if you could consider contributing to our Patreon. We love making this stuff for you guys, and we'd love to keep making more of it. So thank you, and thank you for watching. We're off to go make some more of that juicy content. We'll see you next time. Stay milky.